Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I'm bringing you back my guest, Sara. Remember Sara back in the Wayapa Wuurrk episode? Well, if you haven't got a chance to watch that episode, I would highly encourage you to watch it because in that episode, you will learn some tips on how to live amazingly. The link should pop up here somewhere. In this episode though, I have invited Sara back for her to share her story. You'll be able to see Sara's vulnerability. You might relate to one or two things that she will be sharing. Actually, I know that everyone will be able to relate a thing or two that she's going to share. Let's continue watching because this episode we will be talking about things that people normally don't talk about, like domestic violence and sexual assault. I would highly encourage you to grab your notebook and pen because I know there will be some tips that you might want to write down. So enjoy.
Before you share your story, Sara, I would love to know how are you feeling today?
Yes. Well, before I start, I should just also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on today, which is the Wadawurrung people. I'd like to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians who just, did an amazing job of keeping this land so beautiful, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and also extend that to all other traditional custodians across the lands in this beautiful country of Australia.
Thank you.
And today I'm feeling I'm good. I started a water fast last night. So I'm trying to aim for doing it for 3 days. So I'm missing my morning coffee this morning, but otherwise I'm determined. I've got a cup of hot water here just to keep me going.
What's water fast? Just water.
A water fast, just water for 3 days. Well, they recommend you do it on a regular basis of 24-hour water fast. But I'm trying to go a little bit longer than normal and doing it for a 3-day, which they say is basically about, resetting your system. And I just felt like I needed a little bit of a reset with everything going on in the world. It's also a really good time for the body to, as well as your mind and being in tune with the moon, to do that resetting. And then also the dark moon on the day before the new moon. So it's also a really good time to fast. So if you want that 24-hour fast on the new moon, on the dark moon, which is the day before the new moon. So the dark moon is a good releasing time. And then, of course, a new moon is really good for setting intentions. It's about new beginnings. So
I love it. Thank you for giving everyone tips already. Well, please share your story with people before Wayapa.
Oh, goodness. Where do I start? Wayapa changed my life. I think of in many ways that it saved my life. So I'm if going back in to the beginning, I'm of Welsh heritage. Both my parents are Welsh, and they'd moved to Canada when they actually got married on their honeymoon. As you do, for a honeymoon, let's move countries. And so they moved from Wales to Calgary in Canada, where Dad had a job as a lecturer doing his PhD in chemistry over at the University of Calgary. So they moved over there, and they had us 2 years later. And I say us because I'm an identical twin. We moved quite a lot when I was younger around Canada. So I think we've moved 8 times by the time we moved to Australia. And we moved to Australia in 1982. And so that's been a long time, obviously, that I've been in Australia now. So Canadian, Welsh heritage, Canadian born, and Australian since 1982. So the story is, unfortunately, I had some sexual abuse trauma when I was a very young child from a relative. And that was visiting when I was a child. And I suppressed those memories for a very long time. But in, what we know, even though memories might be suppressed, we still manifest a lot of behaviors from that. So I always felt there was always, there was a lot of stuff that was happening for me throughout my childhood of really low self-esteem. And I could never understand where it was coming from. I always, blamed my twin. She's the oldest one by 3 minutes. And I know, she is bossy. I always say to her, she's way bossier than I am. So I always felt like, maybe it was because we were always being compared to, to one another. We would go to school and, everybody would say, are you Sam or are you Sarah? So massive identity issues all the time. And there were people who were, kids are cruel. And they would often, tell me that, I was the bad twin or the not so nice twin and things like that. So I had a lot of issues. I never really felt like I fitted into my family. I always felt like it just, even though I was a twin, it just didn't feel like I fitted in. And then when we moved countries, for me, I was 14 years old, so it was quite a pertinent time. And when we moved, it wasn't very long afterwards that I started drinking. That started a very long period of turning to alcohol to deal with anxiety and depression. Turning to substances to deal with those things leads, one way. It just keeps going from one thing to the next, So it was alcohol for a very long time and, prescription drugs, antidepressants, tried them all. None of them worked. So then I started self-medicating myself, whether it be through Xanax, or I'd, have heaps of coffees or heaps of energy drinks. So it was constantly, and then I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So, and I'd be starting to worry. So I'd have Xanax at night. So it was this constant up, down, up, down, up, down. And, and then, turn to recreational drugs as well, just to feel like, constantly putting on this mask of hiding from who I was because there was so much pain. So I always thought that was the party, everybody, because I'm naturally very much an introvert, and I didn't feel that was, fitted into my career choice, which was doing public relations and marketing, where you need to be, I know, which, sort of makes sense. And then, but yeah, so it was this constant stuff with, abusive substances, but then also that led to, not really knowing myself, feeling ashamed of who I was, and then started, attracting in the wrong men as well. So I had, made really poor choices around relationships. And stayed with men who didn't treat me very well. I had some really scary points in my life around, domestic violence. And long story short, I went from one bad relationship to the next. And it was actually fleeing Bali. It was at a point where the relationship I was in at the time, that person threatened my life. It got so close that I honestly thought I was going to die, and that was the wake-up call I needed to call up my family, say I need help again, and can you help me out? And they got me home from Bali, and then it was about really rebuilding myself from scratch. That's when, you know, when I was ready to do the work, the real work, because I tried lots of other different things to try and get to that space. But when I was ready to give up alcohol and to, you know, really work on myself, is when I also met Jamie, and Wayapa came into my life, and that gave me a lot of purpose and a feeling of belonging that I had been searching for my whole life. So
Thank you so much for being so vulnerable and honest and willing to share your story. I feel like a lot of people would have related to it in some sort, because in our early teens, a lot of people would turn to alcohol and they don't know what they're doing. They want to fit in, and yeah. Where is your twin sister now, by the way?
she's in Melbourne. She's in stage 4 lockdown. So yeah, so she's in Metro Melbourne, and you know, she's got a beautiful family. I've got a beautiful brother-in-law that, you know, has, you know, they've been together for like 30 years. She's got 3 beautiful children, so I'm very lucky to have, you know, a gorgeous niece and 2 beautiful nephews. Yes, and we're really close these days.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and then I've also got a brother as well, but he's younger, so 6 years younger.
I love big families. You know how you said when you had that sexual experience,
Yeah.
sexual assault, and you didn't know what to do, and then you were suppressing it, etc. So for those who are listening and watching, if you have experienced any trauma, I kind of just want to remind you that your body actually remembers what happened, and then later on it will manifest into something else. And so for those who are listening and watching, for those who might be suffering domestic violence, what are some things that you would say to them?
It's a really big question. I always like to talk about it from a personal viewpoint, because I don't feel there's so many variation when it comes to domestic violence, because it's not clear cut, and it's not something that's really spoken about. It's, you know, you see ads on TV about things, but again, it's you can't deal with, you know, domestic violence in a 30-second ad. You know, I think it's, you know, those ads are important in saying that it's not okay, that it's not acceptable, but and it's not. But we're not, as a society, we're not dealing with the root cause of domestic violence, which I do believe is trauma. It's trauma by all the parties involved. You know, it's often and I hate using the word perpetrator because it just doesn't feel comfortable with me, but you know, the person who is projecting his trauma onto me, those men, you know, they suffered a lot of trauma themselves in my relationships. They suffered a lot of trauma. They had trauma in their early childhoods. They had trauma throughout their lives. And again, you know, many of them were turning to substances to self-medicate and to numb that. And as you said, you know, so beautifully, Ting, is that, you know, our body holds on to that trauma. It stays in our cells. So until we release it and until we deal with that trauma, then we're not going to be able to live well lives. And I think that, you know, when children, you know, are traumatized by things like, you know, sexual abuse, you know, families being broken up, you know, and that's usually because their parents are suffering from trauma, you know. So it's this vicious cycle of trauma. It's intergenerational trauma that's not dealt with. And when none of that is dealt with by society, when we go into blaming mode of saying that's just not good enough, then you're not actually dealing with the problem. I actually believe that, first of all, we need to, for me, and this is totally about me, I needed to, I kept thinking I was doing better, that I would not get into another bad relationship, but then I would get into another bad relationship. And because
You're
I wasn't
repeating the pattern.
I was totally repeating my pattern over and over and over again. And I kept feeling that shame of repeating, because I kept saying, I'm not going to do that again. And then I would do that again. But it was because I wasn't also dealing with my stuff. You know, I wasn't willing to look at my trauma. I wasn't willing to sit in that space. I wasn't willing to, I thought I was doing some meditation. I thought I was doing, you know, different, you know, reading lots of self-help books and all of this sort of stuff. But this is like really, really deep work that we have to do, of really facing our demons. And a lot of the time, you know, society doesn't give us that space. So we have to really make that space for ourselves. I had to get real with myself to say, well, Sarah, are you really working on your stuff if you are still drinking a bottle of wine every night? You know, is that, you know, I don't think so. You know, are you really working on your stuff if you're, you know, not, you know, deeply, you know, meditating, where you're not spending, you know, lots of time reflecting? You know, I was trying to look at a lot of different alternative therapies. You know, I've spent years with counselors, with psychologists, with, you know, doing kinesiology, with doing yoga, doing all sorts of stuff. So I was always kept trying, but it was really not, I really wasn't getting down to the crunch time of saying, what am I going to do, and getting accountable with myself, of being honest with myself, of saying, why was I keep repeating this behavior? And it wasn't until then that, you know, that accountability set me free in many ways. Because the very last time when I returned from Bali, I met up with a friend, and this was the advice that she'd been through had similar life to me, with repeating, you know, relationships, of bad relationships. And she said to me, Sarah, she said, you spend the next 6 months really licking your wounds, like really just taking care of you, being really gentle with yourself, and putting lots of protection around, you know, lots of family and friends that are loving. And then look in the mirror and ask yourself, what are you doing to contribute to this situation? It hit me like a ton of bricks, because my immediate reaction was like, oh my God, I'm the victim. You're blaming me. I'm the victim. I can't believe that this is coming from you. You know, you're supposed to be my friend, blah, blah, blah. Well, it was the best advice I'd ever received.
Yeah.
Because it was true, you know, and I needed to say, well, how was I contributing? Because I was allowing myself to be in those relationships, and I wasn't putting the boundaries in place to say, this is not okay, or, you know, this is, you know, we need to get help, or, you know, all of this sort of stuff. So I think it's really important to give ourselves space to look in the mirror and get really true with ourselves and say, okay, you know, do I need to give up drinking? Yes, I do. Do I need to give up those other, you know, supporting, you know, self-medicating ways? Yes, I do. You know, just so I can get space, you know, to get real with myself.
I 100% agree. And you put it so beautifully in the beginning about how the guys that you were dating, they were dealing with their own trauma as well. I just thank you so much for saying that, because a lot of times people, they play the victim card, and they, I guess, unsure how to start looking within. And so recently I actually watched this video. It's called Step Into the Circle, and it was so beautiful. Basically it's a compassion project in the US, and it's helping the prisoners. And personally, I feel like there is no good or bad people. I feel like there is joyful and miserable people. And
Yeah.
when people say this person is bad, that is only purely one's judgment. And
Yeah.
there are so many reasons why we do certain things subconsciously. And
Yeah,
when people just put the label on other people and be like, you're bad. And I'm just like, well, no, like there's so many layers to each individual. So I feel
yeah,
like people just need to start, I guess, lowering their guard and start listening to other people. So yeah, thank you so much for saying that. What did
yeah.
you do when within that 6 months, by the way?
I actually went and spent the time with my sister because I had moved to Bali, so I was, I didn't have anywhere to go. So my sister and my brother-in-law, took me in, and with the family, my brother-in-law and sister refer to me as their fourth child, the oldest one. And they took me in and they looked after me, and yeah, they were beautiful, and I couldn't have, I wouldn't be here without them. I was like, no, she's going to make me tear up. Um, so they were, they were really beautiful. And they're a really happy family. So it also gave me 6 months of living within that happy family to know what, I was missing out on. But yeah, I think that it's so true. I needed to step out of victim. And that was, for me, such a big deal because it wasn't helping me. It was great. I could be in the blame game of saying, well, that was that, they did all these things to me, but it didn't help me to shift outside of that mindset to think that I had control over my life, And that was another thing, was that, when I went, I did start seeing an awesome breathwork teacher. So I'm a huge supporter of breathwork technique. I spent a lot of years learning that breathwork technique with an amazing woman called Christine Hart Savage, who is known as the Breathing Lady. And that breath work also really helped me to get in tune with who I was, and really start facing my spirit and everything, and that helped me to access a lot of my subconscious, as well as to see how I had and what she had said to me was so true. When I first met her, she said, "Oh my goodness, you've created a mess, haven't you, in your life?" And I was like, "Yes, I have." She said, "Well, that's really good news, because it shows you're a great creator." And I said, "Oh, that's a really great way of looking at it. Yes, I was a great creator. I just had to refocus what I was creating. I had to create the stuff I wanted, not the stuff I didn't want." So again, that personal responsibility for what we create in life is so important. And then, when I had then met Jamie, and then we went on to creating Wayapa Wuurrk, and with that ancient the ancient ways of knowing, doing, and being, that also in that connection to Mother Earth, and that relationship, I finally found something that I could anchor in. I could anchor in knowing that Mother Earth was holding me, and I could have space all of that time, and know that I belonged to her. So it didn't matter if I was a total introvert and didn't have anybody else in my life, as long as I was really, as long as I learned how to love myself and could say, "I love you, Sarah, and I'm happy with you, and I love you unconditionally, and I accept and approve of you," then I knew Mother Earth would also hold me in that space. And it didn't matter if anybody else, didn't. But of course, they do. So
Yes. Thank you so much first of all, I just really want to say thank you for being so brave about everything. You have done an amazing job for yourself. And with the tearing up just then, I think it's amazing. I think people need to just really embrace their emotions. It's okay to tear up. It's okay to cry. It's okay to just let the emotions be. And thank you for
yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, except when I start crying, I can't talk, which isn't great on a podcast.
It's okay. I can edit out.
But yes,
Well,
I agree. We need to, as a society, we need to allow our emotion. And then that's, again, one of that, it's the disconnection to all of those things that leads to, not examining that trauma. And, I think that that's, really important, that we start breaking down the systems that we have in place and recreating new systems, which is, I think, part of the reason that we're going through the stuff that we're going through now with the global pandemic. It is giving us that time to reflect on these things.
Yeah, totally. I just want to say I'm so happy that you now love yourself unconditionally. I just want to say I love you too, even though we haven't physically met, but I know that I do and that people do love you. So for those people who still find other distractions to numb themselves, how can people really help them for those who are suppressing their traumas?
I think just being there, support. I think ultimately it's the choices we make, or the decisions we make are, we can only make those for ourselves. So it wasn't until I decided that I was worthy enough to spend the time working on myself that I started really working on myself. So I think that we need to allow people their journeys, and sometimes that's really difficult. Like, I know how many times my family said to me, "Jesus, Sarah, maybe you shouldn't drink so much, or maybe you shouldn't party as hard, or maybe you shouldn't, maybe is that really the right guy for you?" And you know what I did? As soon as somebody tells you, what happens when somebody tells you you shouldn't do that,
You get
do it
defensive.
more. Yeah, you get defensive, or you do it more, right? So that's, I would start, and that's where that shame comes in around domestic violence, is that when you don't speak out because you feel ashamed that you're getting yourself into that space again. But again, if all of this stuff wasn't taboo, and we could talk more freely about it, and we weren't just blaming, where we were actually really wanting to deal with the trauma, then we could work through it. Because that shame keeps you in a space of turning to that bottle of wine instead of talking to people. So, I think that it's, trying to take that shame away is really important. And that comes from understanding that it's behavior, not people, that are bad. And we have to stop labeling, we have to stop judging, and we need to, say, to ourselves, okay, I come into this world, I was going to say, I didn't come into this world by myself, but I really did, because my sister wasn't right beside me. She'd already gone out. So, ultimately we come into this world by ourselves, and we leave this world by ourselves. So we are totally responsible for our decisions and the things that we decide in our life, the choices we make. And when we embrace that, rather than fearing it, then we live a much, I think, a much more joyful life. And I think that when we can really, sort of say to ourselves that we're worthy enough, that's when we will start making those changes. And until then, all we can do is love and support the people that are going through those journeys, that are having a tough time, and just being there for them, and, saying, if I can help in any way, tell me.
Yeah, totally. So for those people who are actually suppressing the feelings, and they're living in this denial stage. I don't know if you have met any of these people. Like, you can just feel that there is something, in them they need to deal with, but then they are like, no, I'm fine. How can we help those people?
I think just by encouraging and inspiring. I think that, the more that we work on ourselves, the more other people can see that, and hopefully it inspires. So I've had people reach out to me to say, how did you do this? Or how did you do that? And then I can give them, what's worked for me. It may or may not work for them, because we're all individuals. and we all have completely different circumstances. But I think that if we can, inspire, then that's a really good place to come from. And, just being open to different things, I think is really important. So I also, when I know somebody's going through a really hard time, I also draw in, I'm a really big, I believe strongly in the spiritual realm, and that we all have spiritual support team. So I draw on my own spiritual support team to help out with, to help them. So I might send in my spiritual support team to give them extra love and support. And I wish them, and I say, intentions, beautiful intentions that I hope that they get the help that they need, or, and I think that's also opening up, the more that we talk about spirituality and, our soul journeys in these lifetimes, then I think that's, again, we don't spend enough time talking about that stuff. We compare so much all the time. Like I would compare all the time to my sister because we're twins, and we're identical twins. We have the same DNA. So I would compare all the time going, what's wrong with me? She's got a beautiful relationship and beautiful kids. And she was always, really very centered and grounded. And she wasn't, like me. I was just constantly feeling like I was a screw up all the time. So, and I would compare, and then it's not until you start spending more time working through your own spiritual journey that you realize that we're all here for different reasons. So, what her reason is completely different to my purpose. And it just was that, maybe I had different, because I believe in past lives. And I believe that, maybe that I had to come back and finish off different soul journeys with those men that I had, relationships with. Whereas my sister had, that was her soul's journey, just to be with, her husband for a long time and have the kids and do everything else in her life. So I think that comparing each other does get us into so much problems because, we are so unique. And therefore, we are so beautifully divine in our own being. And that's what we need to embrace.
Yes, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much for illustrating that and telling everyone that we're all unique. We're all on our own journey. Like comparing is not going to help you. But, realizing that everyone is on this planet for their own individual reasons. You are beautiful as who you are, honestly. And also thank you for saying that, some things are like taboo topic or whatever. Personally, I honestly feel like there is nothing that you can't talk about. Like people don't feel comfortable talking about money, or they don't feel comfortable talking about their experiences and etc. But so for those who are listening and watching, I just want to encourage you to start sharing your story, because we all relate to stories and you have your own stories. You don't know who you're going to inspire when you share that story. And that was very, very beautiful. What would you tell your younger self then to let yourself know that you are worthy?
God, I would have said so much to her. I would have really loved for her to have started expanding at a younger age. I've started reading, all sorts of different books, and being open to more experiences. But I do believe that the reason that all of that was part of my soul's journey, so I do believe that. So, and it may or may not have, I might have been able to cut some of those things out, and maybe made them a bit shorter or something, but, I don't know, because, it is what it is. So I wouldn't be here today with the knowledge or the experiences that I have without any of that. So maybe all of that was part of my soul's journey, that I needed to experience it on all those, for all those years to be able to get where I got to then say, okay, that's enough, and this is my change in my path, So maybe there was nothing I could say to my younger self, just saying I love you and hold on for the ride, buckle in, and trust in the process of life, and that it will work out as long as you just keep trying to follow your path.
Yes, so beautiful again. But for those who are listening who might be younger, or I guess, in the teenage stage, and you are turning into alcohol and maybe hanging around with, I don't want to say the wrong crowd, but the people who are not really serving you.
Yes.
Like, you know what? Now you really do have a choice. So, like, choose wisely, I guess. Like, use your senses, like, what's right for you. And again, like, you are on this different journey. What will be some books that you would suggest them to read, actually?
Oh goodness, so many books. Love Louise Hay. She was, I did that mirror work, of looking into the mirror and looking into my eyes and saying I love you, for a long time, and I do say to people that's one of the best things that I've ever come across with doing that work. I've read so many different books. It'd be so hard to say, but anything like around Hay House, any of the Hay House authors are fantastic. Reading, and again, one book would lead to another book, and it also practices. I think that I think definitely meditation helps with finding space. I think meditation and mindfulness, and that's why, we love sharing Wayapa with people, because I do believe that if I had come across Wayapa when I was younger, and had the opportunity to understand my relationship with Mother Earth, that it was going to be the longest relationship I ever had in my life, that and I would find purpose and belonging in that relationship. I think that I might have been able to navigate past some of those big obstacles that I had in my life, and that I definitely wouldn't have been turning to alcohol or to substances as much as what I did. So I think that whether people are going out in nature and connecting to it, whether they come to Wayapa and learn more about it, whether they do any mindfulness practice or meditation practice, yoga, it's all good. Anything that is around helping expand ourselves as people, and knowing that there's more to what we think is going on, then I think that's, it's a really good place to start. Know in your gut, right? In your gut when things aren't right. Stop pushing that voice down. Start listening to it. But you have to give yourself space to be able to listen to that voice. And I think that as a society, we need to start encouraging that. We need to start encouraging people. Say, are you listening to your voice? Are you doing meditation? Are you doing mindfulness? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting exercise? Are you getting, all of the things that we know are really good for us, but we don't tend to do.
I agree. And I also want to say, with the alcohol and the other substances that you choose to use, now, they are numbing you, and they are also harming your body. So just be aware of that for those who are accidentally falling into that trap.
Yeah, and I think the numbing, comes because as a society we don't want to deal with uncomfortableness. We're not given the tools. I wasn't, as a young child or growing up, I wasn't given the tools to really embrace those emotions and the uncomfortableness. We get blinded by, thinking that, we have to, that there's a certain way that we have to live our lives, finding the right person, getting a job, doing all of these sorts of things. But that's just beside stuff. That's not your those are purposes, but they're not the really important stuff in life. The really important stuff is realizing who you are and what your place is. And I think that we need to give ourselves that opportunity to do that, to find that space. And I think the more we are embracing those different wellness practices, the closer we're going to be able to get to changing the way that we all interact with each other and connect. And I think that, when we can prioritize on our connection with nature and the environment, when we can start looking after it, then that also in turn helps us to look after ourselves. Because without her, we can't be sustained. And until you acknowledge that relationship, then, you're kind of walking around in the dark, not really understanding why you don't feel like you're enough.
Yes. I love the way that you said it. And you know how you said people follow to be, the career and, to be certain things. I just want to say, for those who are listening and watching, you were born to stand out, not to fit in. So stop putting yourself into those boxes. That's what I want to say.
True. Yeah, we're born to shine.
Yes, totally. I agree. Well, so what are you doing now to remind yourself that you are amazing and worthy?
It's daily work. It is literally daily work that I do on myself. And I don't always get it right. There's times where, I'll think I'm tracking really well, and then all of a sudden something will happen, and I'm finding myself awake, worrying about things. And then I have to pull myself back in and go, oh, Sarah, come on, you know how to do this, if you're worrying about something, work through it, face it, try and explore what is keeping you up at night. So, obviously we do Wayapa every day. I live and breathe Wayapa. And that gives me purpose. And it also gives me deep connection. So that keeps me well. But, I also do meditation as well. On top of that, I try to get good sleep. I exercise, try to get a minimum of 30 minutes exercise a day. I also do the Wayapa movement meditation, so that's really beautiful, and being able to free up your energy flow and really do beautiful gentle stretches and deep connection work. It's a really a very much an embodied practice of connection. And then, eating well, fasting, in tune with nature, being everything, that just the feeling of uncomfortable, of feeling disconnected, of wanting to numb all those feelings, comes from, that constant disconnection that we have from nature, from each other, from our true self. It all boils down to that disconnection. So we need to lean into the disconnection to find out how we can reconnect ourselves.
Yes. So is that how you overcome any fear or stress, like connecting with nature?
Yes, I do my practice every day with Wayapa, but it's more than just a practice for me. It's a knowing. So there have definitely been times in the last few months with the global pandemic where I've just felt totally overwhelmed by it all. And I think that we have to allow ourselves to be human. We're not machines yet. So we have to allow that humanness and say it's okay. It's okay if I do. And then I go, okay, why am I feeling overwhelmed? And then I'll usually go out and sit in our backyard and just be still and think of that connection all around me. So I'll be really mindful of, the birds in the trees or the wind, what's the wind talking to me about? Looking at the ants on the ground and you know, the sun, and thinking, you know what, Sarah, come on, get a grip. You know, this is, all of that is real. What you're creating in your mind is just fear-based. So, you know, and then when you start facing those fears, then you can to work through them.
Thank you for reminding everyone that we are only human. And even though, thank you for saying that it's a learning thing every day. Like we
Yeah.
don't stop. See, like you're still learning every day just because you have overcome, you know, all those past traumas. I wouldn't say all. I would say, you know, sometimes
That's okay. I'm proud to be 52 years young. So
yes, I love how you say 52 years young. And for those who are listening and watching who might not be so young, please don't be afraid. I just want to encourage people like to really step out of their fear-based lifestyle.
yes.
There are
Yes.
supportive groups you can lean into, and the first step really is to lower your guard and know that it is okay. It is okay if you feel like you're going to fail. It is okay to feel shame. It is okay to feel all those negative emotions. Again, you are only human. And
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think that we need to stop judging, because, you know, when there's nothing worse when somebody who steps into their fear and their vulnerability and they share that and they say that they've stuffed up, and then people hate on them. You know, like social media, like, you know, it can either be, you know, a great tool of connection and providing information, or it can be a horrible tool which destroys. And, you know, I think that all of us, again, have to take that responsibility of saying, you know, we have to allow people to grow and we have to encourage that growth. And we do that by, see that forgiveness, Ting? Forgiveness is such an important practice. Forgiveness of ourselves, you know, forgiveness of other people. And again, that all is embodied by allowing people their journeys, but also allowing them their mistakes and letting them grow from that. And if we don't, and people start losing hope. You know, that's, you know, like as you said, within the prison systems, we actually deliver Wayapa within the prison systems at 4 prisons. And I think that, you know, I'm a big believer that, you know, prison's supposed to be a rehabilitative process. And it's, you know, and yet when prisoners come out after serving their time, how difficult is it for them to get jobs or, you know, to reconnect because of, you know, our judgment, you know, of them. And we're not allowing them time to grow and to, you know, to rehabilitate it. I mean, mind you, we need to make sure that we're providing that rehabilitation in the prison system. But, you know, I think for anybody who we all make mistakes. We're all human. And to think that we don't make mistakes it denies our humanness. So just like we don't want to be denied our humanness, we can't deny other people their humanness. And so we need to make sure that we're holding that safe space for people to allow them to grow.
Yes, agree. And I just want to tell people that forgiveness is so liberating. And if you have trouble forgiving yourself or for those who have hurt you or etc., I would highly encourage you to start writing letters. I just write them down. That's how I feel. Well, other than Wayapa's service, where would you encourage people, or how would you encourage people to start connecting within, to face their fears and etc.?
There is some great practices out there. First of all, I would suggest that, you know, they do some mirror work where they're actually, you know, looking in the mirror and talking to themselves about saying, I love you and I forgive you, and that you're worthy of creating, whatever it is that you're wanting in your life, positive, and that we are all creators, and we can do that work. And then I would, the things that have helped me so much is breath work. It's an amazing technique to learn. There's so many different types of breath work, but there's the two people that I'd like to shout out to is the breathing lady who helped me, Christine. So you can Google the breathing lady. She's fantastic. And then there's also one of our Wayapa practitioners who is also a breathwork practitioner, and she and her breathwork partner, Amy, they've got a great studio called Summer Healing Studio in Brunswick in Melbourne. Obviously not open at the moment, but they've got an organisation called Rebirthing Australia. So it's rebirthing technique. Again, all around the breath, so important to liberate our breath and to understand how much, if we don't breathe, we die, right? And that's part of what's happening to us, is that when we're not breathing properly, we're not embracing our breath, and, we're not really living our fullest. And so breathing is really, really important to give yourself space and to allow yourself to really connect deeply within. And, then also there's doing meditation, mindfulness, getting outside and just walking, getting outside and sitting, just sitting with, and you don't even have to worry about trying to still your mind, but you just observe, sitting outside, observing the birds, observing the trees, observing the ants and the bees and, everything around you. Just, it makes you feel better. You're tapping into that energy that Mother Earth provides, and it will make you feel better, I promise you.
Yes, just not your phones.
Just not your, no. Phones are important for connection, but as long as we're connecting, everybody knows, I'd much rather somebody pick up a phone and speak to me rather than texting, because it takes me forever to text. I'm not a millennial, so I can't text with thumbs. But yeah, I think it's really important to make sure that we keep connecting, whether it be over Zoom or whether it be, by calling people and saying, hi, how you going, when we can't actually go out and see each other. And, as I said, hugging the earth, hugging a tree, hugging our pets, our fur babies, oh my gosh, they're so, they give us so much joy. Just tapping into that can just give yourself enough space to feel like things are going to be okay.
Yes, and also encourage people to hug themselves too. And for those who are listening and watching, I just want to tell you that there are many ways out there that you can find help, and that you are not alone on this journey. Yes, you come to this world and die alone, but there are ways that you can help yourself. And just then you spoke about the Mother Earth energy. I just want to touch on the point where you talked about the spiritual energy. Like sometimes when some people, they go through some bad stuff, and then they underestimate the energy that they have. Like, for example, if somebody tells you that they are going through something, and then you are feeling sorry for them, you pity them, you do all these negative energy, you are actually projecting all these negative energy onto them, and they will manifest even more, I would say, not so great stuff. So if somebody does tell you that, oh, they're going through some shit, well, I would encourage you to think of the other side, to be like, you got this. Like, just a simple thing, you got this, you can go through this, and I'm here for you. Simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just holding space for them is a beautiful thing, and not buying into that. I agree. You don't want to buy into to the negative stuff. They're dealing with it enough. They don't need your your vibration of going, Oh, they need your vibration of love and support and believing that they'll work it through. So yeah, it's definitely, I agree with you 100% there, Ting.
Thank you. Well, before I ask you my last question, do you feel like there is anything I didn't ask or you would like to share?
No, we covered a lot today. But I think that that we need to, as a society, we need to start dealing with trauma, and we, as a society, we need to start dealing with our disconnection from nature, and that causes trauma. And until we, really start working through that stuff, then we're not going to be able to get to the real causes, as to why those things happen. Those negative behaviors happen. So, and I think that it's really important that people know that I agree, they're not alone. Even if they're alone, they're not alone, because they have got Mother Nature with them all the time. So they've got a tree, they've got, grass, they've got her vibration, they've got the air, they've also got all of the things. So, it's something like 0.8%, or I don't know if I said that right, sorry, 0.008% is everything that we see. The rest of it is everything that we don't see. So we have so much around us all the time that we're not connected into. And if we understood that we've got, that spiritual realm, whether you see it as angels or guides or ancestors, or spirit totems, whatever it is, it's a spiritual team that is there supporting us all the time, and we can turn to the spiritual team to support us. Even if we are feeling totally alone, we're never alone.
Yes, I agree. Well, other than being there for other people and being a listener, how else do you think we can be there for each other in general? This is my last question.
I definitely think that we need to start tuning in to being real with each other, tuning into Mother Earth, tuning in to deep listening to our own spirit, deep listening to each other, and connecting. I think that connection is just so important. Whether we talk about it, is in Wayapa is connection to the earth, connection to self, and connection to spirit, and to, of course, connection to the community, to each other. So I think that those things are just so important. And yeah, I think that if we support each other through that and not judge and allow each other to grow, then we can create a better world.
Yes. And for those who are listening and watching, if you're wondering how to connect within, well, rewind back and listen to the tips. Well, Sarah, I honestly just want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sharing your story and for being so vulnerable, for being so brave, for saying what you have said. And I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Ting. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. I wish I was as wise as you are at your age. But yeah, we have all got our journeys, as we said. So, but it's been lovely chatting to you, and of course, all of you, the wisdom that you've shared as well, which has been really important.
Thank you. I'm actually secretly 52 as well.
Well, you look much better than I do for 52. But then again, I'm comparing. It's such a bad habit that we do as human beings.
Asian genes. Nah.
Asian genes. Is that what you said?
So, what are you going through in life right now? I am going to be 100% honest and roll with you. Right after Sarah and I end the phone call, I had to give myself a minute and cry. I am simply filled with gratitude on how she was so open with her story, how she shared her story, how she shared herself, and more importantly, share tips with you on how you can start living your life. You have a story. You have gone through things. I know. Please don't underestimate in the power of talking to other people. There's no need to feel shameful or as if you're not good enough if you don't have it all together today or yesterday or maybe tomorrow. You are only human, remember? You are allowed to feel all those things. You are allowed to fail. It is through all those layers and life journeys that we go through, we learn and grow and discover more about life. If you're someone who is suffering from domestic violence, please don't be afraid to reach out to Wayapa Wuurrk. And if you're someone who is yet to uncover your childhood traumas or any traumas, I would like to remind you that it is never too late to start and to really find your self-worth and really love yourself. If you are an adolescent and you are feeling extremely lost, I would encourage you to be comfortable to be uncomfortable. And reach out. Again, you are born to stand out, not to fit in. Now don't forget to subscribe, click the thumbs up button if you have loved it, and share it with someone. Definitely share it with someone because you never know what they're going through. Now click here if you want to listen to more inspiring stories and more wise wisdoms, or you can click here to start living life amazingly and fully. And remember, you are amazing and you are not alone. I will see you next time.